President Trump says he will remember U.S. companies that do not seek refunds for the tariffs that he put in place. His comments come a day after a refund system for businesses that paid tariffs launched. That system was put in place after the Supreme Court struck down the president's most sweeping tariffs in February. Here's exactly what the president said.
If they don't do that, I'll remember them. I will tell you that, because I'm looking to make this country strong. Supreme Court could have helped us.
So he says he'll remember that. That could be seen by companies who do ask for the tariff relief as a veiled threat. We'll see what happens, but CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten joins us now, and he's got some solid numbers here. Harry, just how pivotal were tariffs to Trump's sort of political standing in his second term?
Dude, just take the L, man. Just take the L. Tariffs were the biggest unforced political error that I can recall in a long period of time. Because if you're looking for just one turning point in terms of when Donald Trump went underwater, it was right around Liberation Day, man. Just take a look here. Trump's negative net approval rating. Every poll since March 29, 2025, right? Liberation Day was just a few days later. That means that Donald Trump, there hasn't been a single poll that meets CNN's standards for reporting in which he has had anything but a negative net approval rating for 389 days. As I said, dude, just take the L. Tariffs are a terrible political thing for you, my man.
Why were the tariffs really this sort of key to seeing this downturn in the polls?
Yeah, because, you know, Trump, obviously, he ran on tariffs, right? But the idea was much more popular in practice than it actually, or as an idea than it actually was in practice. Because just take a look here. I mean, this just gives you the name of the game. Americans on Trump and tariff in the 2024 election versus Kamala Harris. Look at this. Trump was trusted more on tariffs by 12 points. But look at his net approval rating down. Look at that. That's an over 40-point shift away from the President of the United States. He's 48 points underwater with independents on tariffs. This is just a political disaster. And the longer he drags it out, the more and more it can hurt his political standing.
Well, it certainly hurt the economies, not just the people's pockets, businesses' pockets, but also the world. Did anyone benefit from this when it comes to like global leadership?
Yeah, the people who stood up against Donald Trump. That's who benefited from it. I mean, just take a look here. I mean, Mark Carney, obviously in Canada, look at this. His net approval rating plus 24 points. How about the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum? Look at this, plus 41 points on the net approval rating. So the people who stood up to Trump on tariffs, those are the people who benefited, versus Donald Trump. When he went up against these world leaders, well, he just went right straight into the political basement.
Because you can put money on just about anything these days, you know, when these companies are looking at these prediction markets are looking at this, what do people think about whether or not these companies are going to try to get relief?
Yeah, okay, so the companies at this point are trying to get political relief, Sarah Seidner, but what about the people themselves, right? What about the chance that you actually get a stimulus check, you know, sent out by the end of 2026? The chance has been going down. It was 44%. Look at this. It's now 11%. So the American people aren't going to get relief, at least according to the prediction markets, on something that they desperately hate very, very much. I said a political disaster for Donald Trump from start to finish.
Yeah, there was a $2,000 check that people had heard him say. This is sort of around the time when he said it, and now they don't think it's going to happen. Harry Enten, you know what's happening? You are, buddy.
I'm happening. We're happening.
Long security lines at airports could be coming back. The Department of Homeland Security is warning it will run out of money to pay TSA workers by early May, just in time for summers, unless Congress reaches an agreement to end the partial government shutdown. Yes, that is still ongoing. Right. The stalemate, exactly, on Capitol Hill. One of the reasons perhaps that Americans' disapproval of Congress just tied a record high. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten is here. Just how bad is it?
You know, I just want to say to Congress, stand up and applaud. You're usually hated, but usually not this hated. You're reaching, or at least tying, record highs in terms of disapproval. Hello, 86% of Americans disapprove of Congress. That is tied with November of 2013 for the all-time high. As I said, Congress usually hated, but usually not this hated. You're actually managing to tie records. Just 10%. Just 10% of Americans approve of the job that Congress is doing. So therefore, as I said, stand up and give yourselves a round of applause. You managed to do it. Congratulations.
Or walk away in shame. This 10% approval, like, give us some context to what all of this means in comparison with other things.
Okay, so you see this 10% approval, and I just was searching my head. I was like, okay, what else basically has 10% of the population by their side? Just take a look here. Okay, Americans who say that the moon landing was faked back in 1969. Sarah's side, and they're off on the side laughing. More Americans say that the moon landing was fake back in 1969 than actually approve of the job that Congress is doing right now at 10%. That 10% is equal to the percentage of Americans that believe that the Earth is flat. Of course, we did not fake the moon landing. We did land on the moon. And of course, the Earth is actually a sphere, my dear friends.
That's the one that made me
It's round.
laugh. Because
Yes. It's not flat. You can't walk off the edge of the Earth. But apparently, the same percentage believe that Congress is a job well done.
That is brutal. When you look at this, what does this tell you about sort of where Americans' minds are and why they are so annoyed or pissed with Congress?
Yeah, pissed is a great word. Perturbed is another one. I like my peas early in the morning. But I would just say this. You see this 10%, right? You go, how the heck did we end up here? You know, Republicans control the House. Republicans control the Senate. But yet, Republicans have actually turned on this Congress. Just take a look here. I mean, just look at this. Congress's net approval rating among the GOP. Back in March of 2025, it was plus 33%. That was the net approval. That was the net approval. Down it goes to minus 56. What is that? That's like an 89-point move over a little bit years' time. No wonder at this point Congress is facing record high disapproval rating, because even Republicans, and their party controls Congress, absolutely despises it.
Wow, those numbers are abysmal. I don't know what Congress can do to fix them.
There's nothing. I mean, maybe they can walk off the edge of the flat Earth.
I was going to say, I got one thing they can do. They could actually give a budget, approve a budget, which
they
is
could
like
actually
their
do
number one
something,
job.
do something. Then maybe people might actually like you.
All right, Harold. The president likes to talk about the markets, mostly when they're up.
Correct.
Right? But there's a reason for this. There's a reason why he likes to talk about the markets at this stage of his administration.
Yeah, it's a success story if you're in the White House right now, the stock market is, and you can see it right here. Okay, S&P 500 shifts at this point in a presidency. You know, coming into today at the close of yesterday, look at this, up 19%. That is higher than the average president since 2001, when it's up 15%, and way, way higher than the average presidency since 1961, up 6%. So this stock market has been up like a rocket, and no wonder the president of the United States wants to talk about it. And you'll also notice, Johnny B., when the stock market is up, perhaps Democrats don't want to talk about it nearly as much.
All right, so what are people saying about whether or not it's actually a good time to be in the market?
Yeah, okay, I think one of the reasons why this number is up, this percentage is up, is pretty simple. Just take a look here. Stock owners who say that investing $1,000 into the market right now is a good idea. You see the majority of them, 52%, say it's a good idea. I will even note that even 41% of Democrats or lean Democrats who are in the stock market currently say it's a good idea to continue to invest in the stock market. So no wonder the market is up at this particular point, because those who are in it say, hey, it's a good idea to keep investing.
And we noted this morning markets are down a little bit, but they had been going up over the last 2 weeks, even though they had gone down, way down, for much of the war with Iran. But what do you think might have turned it around?
A ceasefire. This is what the people in the market want. They want stability. They want a ceasefire. And you see this across the board. Look at this. Approval of Iran ceasefire agreement. Among all voters, 74%. Among Republicans, 84%. 72% of Democrats. 70% of independents. The ceasefire is a very good thing in the eyes of those and the minds of those who are involved in the stock market. No wonder we have seen the rallying that's going on. If the ceasefire continues to exist, I continue to expect stocks to continue to rise up.
This may be one reason why the president keeps extending the ceasefire,
Correct.
Even without any obvious
He's
concessions.
keeping his eyes on the stock market for sure.
All right. What are the prediction markets saying about where the market is headed for the rest of this year?
Okay, so you see in slide number 1, right, that so far in Trump's second term, his second presidency, the stock market has been up like a rocket. The people who are putting their money where their mouths are, those in the Kalshi prediction market, chance that the S&P 500 will finish up for the year, up for 2026, you see it right here, 64%. So they are not expecting those gains by the end of the year. Look, each and every day will have its downs, its ups, etc. But over the long term, those who are putting their money where their mouth is expect that the S&P 500 will be up.
Show me again what the market does over the course of the day. All right, that's intraday trading, ladies and gentlemen. Harry Enten, thank you very much. What's happening inside Iran has very much to do with the current state of the United States economy and inflation, which is what voters regularly tell us in all kinds of polling they would like to see the president focused on, not necessarily the military conflict. With us now is CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten. So what am I talking about there? When it comes to inflation, which is something that every poll tells us that Americans care about, how's the president doing?
Yeah, okay. Americans say inflation is the number one issue facing them right now. And to quote the great Happy Gilmore, according to them, the price is wrong when it comes to the president of the United States. Just take a look at these net approval ratings when it comes to inflation. The president of the United States is hitting all-time record lows in all of these polls, and all of them. NBC came out yesterday, 36 points underwater. CBS came out a few weeks ago, 38 points underwater. Ipsos, Reuters, 43 points underwater. CNN came out earlier this month, 45 points underwater. And taking the cake is UMass Amherst, 47 points underwater across all of these polls. Trump is in his worst position ever on the issue that the American people say over and over and over again is their key number one issue.
Was it always thus?
No, it wasn't this always thus, Mr. Berman. And this is what is so amazing to me. I mean, these shifts that we're just seeing, my goodness gracious. Voters on Trump and inflation. In the 2024 election, remember, Trump got reelected to a second term, and Joe Biden got pushed to the curb in large part because Americans felt he couldn't handle inflation. Trump was more trusted than Kamala Harris on inflation by 7 points. Look at his net approval right now. You average all those polls on the first side of your screen, 42 points underwater. That is a nearly 50-point shift away from the president of the United States.
A nearly 50-point shift. That's bad. What's worse?
Yeah, what's worse? You think this is bad, a nearly 50-point shift. How about a 70-point shift? I'm laughing because you never see numbers like this. Look at this. Independents on Trump and inflation. In the 2024 election versus Harris, Trump was favored by 10 points. Down he goes. Down he goes. He's down to 60 points underwater on inflation. That is a 70-point shift in a little bit less than 2 years' worth of time. John Berman and I are big baseball fans. And I will tell you, I'm going to go to Trump's home borough in Queens because, to be honest, it's the only comparison I can think of. Donald Trump is in worse shape on inflation right now than the New York Metropolitans are in the NL East. That is how bad. And what, the Mets just lose their 11th straight game?
At a certain point, you stop counting because there's so many. There's two things I just want to point out quickly here. The two words that matter so much here are, independence and inflation. These are two areas the president did well on in the last election.
He did well. This is what is happening here. The strengths that Donald Trump once had with the electorate, the things that got him elected to a second term, you can wave adios amigos goodbye to them. And why that's so important is even though Trump isn't on the ballot come November, a lot of Republicans in Congress are on the ballot, and if these numbers hold, you can wave adios amigos, goodbye, see you later, certainly that House majority, and maybe that Senate majority as well.
Harold Enten, thank you very much.
You've seen the trend, Virginia jumping into redistricting, maybe Florida as well, very soon. The trend really all began with Texas 10 months ago, redrawing state lines to favor Republicans, a very vocal demand of President Trump. Roughly 1 year later, there are some serious concerns among Republicans that those new lines in Texas might not work out like the president intended. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten is here now with me to run the numbers for us. So just how much of the chance does the GOP have to hold on to those House seats since this redistricting happened in Texas?
Yeah, talk about one of your all-time backfires potentially, because just take a look here. The chance that the GOP holds on to the House, you go back to the day that Texas redistricted, according to the Kalshi prediction market, it was a 33% chance. You come over to this side of the screen, well, that is way down. Hello, down we go. We're talking about just a 14% chance now that the GOP, in fact, holds on to the House of Representatives. So despite starting the fire back in Texas all those months ago, it feels so long ago because the Republican chances of holding on to the House have absolutely declined. Down we go into the water.
Look, it's not unusual when the Republicans are in power and then the midterm comes. We've seen this with Democrats, Republicans throughout the history. But how much has the national environment moved toward them?
Yeah, okay. So, at the end of the day, a rising tide lifts all boats if you're the case of a Democratic Party, right? And what we've seen is a massive shift on the national level. You can see it in the generic congressional ballot. Just take a look here. I mean, this just tells the story, right? Back when the day that Texas redistricted, Democrats held a lead on the generic ballot, but it was just 3 points. Since that time, that lead has doubled. It has doubled to 6 points. I don't care how much you redistrict. If you have a 6-point national environment in your favor, if you're the Democrats, Republicans can only redistrict so many seats. And at this point, they're actually behind when it comes to redistricting. Democrats have actually gained more seats. So not only are you seeing that the redistricting has moved against the Republican Party, the national environment has moved against them as well. You got a 6-point lead if you're the Democrats. This is the type of thing you say, yes, 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 we're getting that majority back. And that's why one of the reasons why their chances have gone way, way up and the Republican chances have gone way, way down.
What about on the individual level, individual seats?
Yeah, okay, so you take a look at the national environment here, right? But what about seat-by-seat analyses like those that are done by Inside Elections or the Cook Political Report? You can see it here. Okay, party edge and House seat pickup chances. The day that Texas redistricted, look at that. Republicans actually had an edge in terms of the potential seat pickup opportunities. That is the toss-up seats or those that were leaning in their direction. They had a lead of 8. But look at where we are today. Democrats actually hold the lead. They have a net pickup opportunity of 12 seats. That's a 20-seat shift, a net shift in their direction. That is partially because of the redistricting. It is partially because of the national environment. But the bottom line is this. If Donald Trump and the Republican Party thought that they could tilt the midterms and their elections because of the Texas redistricting, they were sorely, sorely mistaken.
It is interesting, though, because now there's a battle in Virginia over the redistricting that the voters approved. A judge has halted that for now, so we will have to be watching this.
We will see, but I will say that if 4 seats is what ultimately determines the House of Representatives, then Democrats have definitely wasted a big opportunity. At this point, I think that the majority would be able to withstand that.
In the UK, Parliament has passed a bill putting a lifelong ban on anyone born after 2008 from buying cigarettes. It's expected to become law next week and create what lawmakers there call a smoke-free generation. They hope it will end tobacco use altogether over time and break the cycle of addiction and health issues caused by smoking. CNN Chief Data Analyst Harry Enten is here. Okay, so you've got this ban. They're trying to see if they can keep an entire generation from smoking and to end it altogether. How do people in the U.S. feel about cigarettes and smoking now?
Yeah, I think back and I think to myself, I was looking at my aunt and uncle's, wedding album, and like half the people there were smoking. And then I look at my parents' wedding album, and that happened 20 years later, and there was like no one smoking. And I mean, this is just part of the long-term trend here. I mean, Americans who smoke a cigarette in the last week, back in 1954, we're talking about nearly half the population, 45%. By 74, it was still 40%. But then down we go, 27% by 1994, 2014, 21%. And in the last year, tied for a record low, just 11% of Americans smoked a cigarette in the last year. That is 1/4 the number, essentially, that we had back in 1954. Smoking is just something that most Americans no longer do, at least smoking a cigarette.
And that's the next question, because in many states they're legalizing marijuana, or they have legalized, or they're moving towards it. So what's the difference there between smoking marijuana and smoking cigarettes? And you're seeing a rise in one and a fall in the other.
If you watch, the show Freaks and Geeks, which is a great show that was on in like 1999, essentially what you saw was all the kids outside, smoking a cigarette. But now, if anything, the quote-unquote cool kids, what are they doing? They're actually smoking marijuana. And take a look here. Americans who smoked or smoked a cigarette in the last week, it's just 11% a cigarette. Marijuana, more people actually smoke marijuana, at least somewhat regularly, than smoked a cigarette in the last week, which is just not something you could have possibly imagined 40, 50 years ago. But here we are today, where marijuana has been rising in terms of its uses, while cigarette smoking has absolutely fallen off the cliff.
There's another big thing that I do see young people using, and that's vaping or e-cigarettes. What does that look like in comparison with regular cigarettes?
Yeah, okay, so let's add e-cigarettes to it, right? The vaping to it, and you still see this downward trend, right? Smoked a cigarette in the last week, including e-cigarettes. In 54, we mentioned 45%, then 27%. Even there, if you include that number, we're still only talking about 16% of Americans who either are doing e-cigarettes or smoking a traditional cigarette in the last week. No matter what way you count it up, Smoking is just way down from where it was, say, 70 years ago, and it's also down from where it was a decade ago. Cigarette smoking, simply put, has been on the decline, though I will note that most Americans don't want it banned, they just don't want to do it themselves.
But you note here that it's up just a tick from smoking cigarettes when you add in
when you
the vaping.
add it in, you add essentially about 5% to your population.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when people were smoking and drinking in the newsroom.
That ain't
That's how
happening
old
right
I am.
Yeah.
Harry Enten, I do appreciate it. Well,
no.
sorry. We've
What are
got
you
one
doing?
more. My bad.
Sider's ruining my jib here, folks.
I swear I wasn't smoking anything.
Chance that, look, we're talking about, the fact that marijuana outrunning smoking. I mean, just take a look at this. The chance that the U.S. reschedules marijuana before the end of Trump's term, it's right now at a 79% chance. It was 89% a few months ago. But the bottom line is this. We're seeing potential real movement in federal regulations as well. We might not close smoking, but it may be much easier to smoke marijuana or do marijuana, at least nationally.
Without worrying about the federal government coming after you, because some states already make
Correct.
it legal. That's the thing.
That's a big thing.
It's a big thing. Harry Enten, it is a pleasure. Thank you. There's a lot of jokes I could say. And
a lot of jokes, but we're high on life. That's what we're high on right now.
That's right, Harry. Good for us.